with a sense of urgency, the art of getting stuff done. You may well say to yourself, let me show you all the stuff I get done. And I'm sure you do. This is not about what you do, rather how you lead with a sense of urgency. Terry, my EA, has this little note on the side of her desk, and it says, a lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine. Have you ever made a lack of planning on your part someone else's problem? Come on, hands up. I have. I go into panic mode and expect everyone around me to jump to attention, run around and find a solution to my problem. Who cares what they're up to? And how come they didn't preempt that this was about to happen? Let me paint a real scenario for you. We don't do PowerPoint at Integrity and Values. Well, we didn't before COVID. We do now, and I'm not proficient with PowerPoint. I had made a commitment to Alison, who you just heard from, my second chair, that I would have the slides ready for an upcoming client's workshop. I just said, yes. Have you ever done that? Knowing that my plate was already pretty full. I started to do what I promised, and I got frustrated with it really quickly because of my lack of skills around the program. I picked up the phone and called Terry, launching into telling her what I wanted with absolutely no context. She interrupted me and said, you do know you talk in bullet points when you're stressed and overwhelmed. That pulled me up quick smart. She's right, of course. And then I jumped all over the place with 20 different instructions, and she's scrambling to keep up. None of you would ever do anything like this, would you? You wouldn't just dump something on someone, would you? So Terry's attempting to join the dots, and she isn't giving me the responses I want immediately. And my anxiety spikes. We discussed it later, and she told me I have a voice of disappointment. It sounds like this. Oh? I don't know how. I don't know if you have a voice and face of disappointment. But apparently that's mine. What do you think that does to her when her highest value is service, and her motto for me as my executive assistant is, I'm here to make your life easier. So when I'm in a panic, and I'm in that panic mode and overwhelmed, or I have a new bright idea, everyone suffers around me. There are many ways that we as leaders cause chaos, and if we can own it, we can do something about it. I've mentioned just one of mine. As leaders, we have the power to send people off on tangents in all directions on some supposedly really important goal or new task that we have for them. How do we act with a sense of urgency so we don't end up with one urgent task after another, causing chaos, stress, and anxiety? That's what we're about today. Distinguishing the difference between urgent and the need to act with a sense of urgency. For those of you who are new to our webinars, we will pose a question, send you to breakout rooms for a quick discussion, then bring you back. Let's get into this. Our first discussion for the day is, what is the difference between urgent and a sense of urgency? So the question, what is the difference between urgent and a sense of urgency? Off you go with your moderator. Have a chat. Welcome back. What is the difference between urgent and acting with a sense of urgency. So what did you come up with in your breakout rooms? Urgent is when we are reactive. We have limited or no control over what is happening. We don't think, we just go into automatic mode. We create urgent around us because we didn't take the action earlier, causing the escalation of issues. Small pebbles now become huge boulders. Now we are in dire straits if what is required doesn't happen immediately. When we create that urgent scenario, we cause that chaos around us. I'm sure many of you know that when chaos is ruling, we make mistakes. Our people make mistakes and we make it their problem. Put up your hand if you've ever done something like that. I have. So when things are urgent, the level of panic rises and a sense of desperation enters. By the way, there are things that are actually urgent. When we as a nation needed to deal with COVID, it was urgent. We had to do something, and there were massive actions that leaders took once the announcement was made, and most of the work was urgent. You had to do it immediately. There was nothing else to do except that, and it fell on the shoulders of the leaders of organisations. The funny thing is, the majority of leaders are great in emergency. We love it. We really thrive, and we create a lot of stress for ourselves and those around us. If we are not creating urgent reactiveness around ourselves, what does it look like to lead with a sense of urgency? A sense of urgency is when we are proactive. We are constantly looking at the present. What actions need to be taken today to ensure the future that we envisage? Then we purposefully make moves now to cause that outcome. Think about this. If there are no sales in your pipeline, today is too late to have a proactive effect. A leader who leads with a sense of urgency knows what the lag period is for a deal. And if there are no sales today, the important conversations needed to have been taken place months and sometimes years before. Today is too late. In the words of W. Edwards Deming, leadership in one word is prediction. The predictive leader leads with a sense of urgency. That means we have the capacity to remain present when things are moving fast around us and make good decisions, preempt any hiccups. We are able to slow things down and make the necessary plans to keep things moving forward purposefully. Remember my PowerPoint story with Terry? I didn't do anything for a few days because my plate was pretty full. Then I fussed about for another 3 days. And by the time I called her, I was up a creek without a paddle and made it her problem. Then I got a bit pissy when she wasn't immediately in my headspace with my As leaders, how do we avoid putting our people in that position? First, we make a commitment. We don't wait until the 11th hour to make it happen and put everyone around us into a tailspin. How many of you can relate to this? Or to some of it? Where you spend too much time cleaning up messes that could have been averted. To act with a sense of urgency means that we move things forward purposefully. Purposefully is the quality of consistent applied pressure over time. We've got our eye on what's required and today we're looking across the organisation to ensure that it's happening. This means it's important to the challenges that are central to the success of the business. When we act with a sense of urgency, it determines the actions that keep the business moving forward. So remember, urgent, you're reactive to what's going on. A sense of urgency, you're proactive. You're thinking ahead, and on a daily basis, you act to move those things forward. You've got a sense, whoops, lost my place, guys, just a sec. You've got a sense of where things are at inside of the business at any time. Where they're falling through, where are things falling into the urgent bucket in your business? So that's a question for you. Where are those urgent things that are falling through the cracks in your business? So all of you, take a moment and write down 3 examples. What are the things that are falling through the cracks in your business? Just take a moment, write them down, just 3. Okay, so you've got your 3 examples. Now, working backwards, ask yourself, what did I walk past or ignore that could have contributed to this situation? Also, when did I do that? 2 days ago? 3 months ago? 1 year ago? Now, what is the promise to yourself about changing and impacting that behaviour of avoidance? So do this exercise for yourself. Hands up if you've got something so far about what's happening inside of your business. Hey, who's getting an inkling? Let's move to our next question. What are the behaviours and actions when we work with a sense of urgency? Off you go and have a chat. So, what does it look like to work with a sense of urgency? As I said earlier, urgency is applying consistent pressure over time for a specific result. Leading with a sense of urgency means there is a requirement for you to keep your attention on the activities and tasks that keep you on track, moving and correcting with velocity. Some of the actions required to maintain a sense of urgency are: number 1, pay attention. There is nothing more important than paying attention. That means being truly present to what is happening or not happening and consistently checking in. I often hear people say, I'm paying attention, I'm here. Actually, what is happening is the lights are on and no one's at home. Remember my PowerPoint story with Terry? I've gone off ta-das with my panic attack. I'm definitely not present, and my attention is on my distress and my upset and not on the actions that are required now. As leaders, when we own this, we can regroup, work with our people, then the magic happens and we experience their loyalty and support to us and the business. So what are you paying attention to? A clear strategy determines you pay attention to what your approximate objectives are with the correlating tasks that need to be actioned. Those objectives decide where your focus will be. A poor strategy has people doing work that doesn't move the business forward. Previously, we had the fogger mirror strategy, and the team still laughs about it. I cringe with embarrassment. I used to say, if they fog a mirror, go and give them a profile and a feedback session. Literally, we did hundreds of profiles and feedback sessions for free. People told us that it was the most profound conversation that they ever had about themselves. The problem was they were not in our target market, and therefore we didn't get a return for all of our activity. In fact, we were going backwards. Everyone was working really hard. The issue was our attention and focus was on the wrong thing. Today, we're very clear about who would get the most value out of what we do, and we target those companies. And a number of you are here today, so thank you for being here. It took something for us to get clear. It took something for us to get clear about our strategy and have the entire business know and understand it, as well as their role in it. Next, hold people to account. Holding people to account as the leader is a cornerstone to maintaining a sense of urgency. There are 3 rules for holding people to account. I'll briefly go through them with you. However, if you'd like to do a deeper dive, I invite you to listen to our webinar on leading from the accountability zone, which you can find on our website. Keep these rules in mind when holding people to account. 1, give it a timeline. There is always a by when. Without it, you lose a sense of urgency. This empowers the team. Without it, you disempower them, leaving them floundering. Number 2, there are checkpoints in any project. As soon as you have missed a small deadline, you will miss the big one. The bigger the project, the bigger the knock-on effect. Make sure people meet the checkpoint deadlines, and if they fail to do so prior to the I'm getting a bit tongue-tied here this morning. Ensure that they catch up prior to the next checkpoint deadline. There are consequences. Keeping things on track has great positive consequences. When it goes off track, the consequences could be dire to you and the business. 4, lower your tolerance levels. As leaders, we cause urgent type behaviour if our tolerance levels are too high. I wish I could spend more time on this. We cover this topic in our Leadership in Action program. The session alone takes 5 hours to cover. Lower the tolerance levels. As leaders, we cause urgent type behaviour if our tolerance levels are too high. Whoops, this is the wrong thing. Just a second, guys. So here's a question for you. I want you to ask yourself this. What do I tolerate and take too long to say something about when I can see things are going off the rails? Do I take a day, a week, a year, never? We cause urgent type behaviour inside our businesses because our tolerance levels are too high. Then number 5, create a culture where everyone can challenge anyone. A question for you. Who in your executive is unafraid to challenge you? Write their name down. When did they do that last? Now be honest. My team do not let me off the hook, and each of them have their own style of challenging me. What I've learned is I need to be open and generous in receiving their feedback and ideas. It is our responsibility as leaders to create the environment where this can happen. And we are at the source of that. If you haven't been challenged in the last 7 days, your people are not empowered. What are you going to do about that? Go and empower your people. If you demonstrate lower tolerances, You give them permission to tighten their tolerance levels with their people. It's like monkey see, monkey do. When you lead, they will follow. So now you've got an awareness of what's required to keep a sense of urgency present at all times. Our next question is, what are the signs that you're operating with false urgency? Off you go. Go and answer that question. Have a discussion. Hello. Welcome back. What are the signs of false urgency? How about endless meetings? How many of you have countless meetings? You just go from one meeting to the next, and you're like a mouse on a treadmill, constantly moving, going nowhere. This is a sign of false urgency. I had a coaching session with a new executive who had recently joined a team we have been working with for some time. He said something that had me sit up and listen. He said this: I have attended more meetings in this company in 4 weeks than I attended in my last role in a year. We use the meetings to do our thinking rather than coming to the meeting with our thoughts and suggestions. We get nowhere and make no progress. It is not uncommon in businesses that meetings are run back to back. You finish a meeting at 10 o'clock and you're supposed to be in the next one at 10 o'clock. What are you, a magician as well? This sets up false urgency, where our occurring world is we're really busy, believing we're very efficient and using our time well. Research says we need time between meetings to reflect and action the tasks from the previous meeting, and to prepare and to present and be present for the next meeting. I am very aware that if I was the boss of my calendar, I'd be the crazy mouse on the treadmill, going nowhere, living with constant overwhelm. Everyone knows if you want time with me, you call Terry. She'll give it to you and you'll get my full attention. So, what's your diary like? People become frustrated, tired, and anxious when there's false urgency, running from one meeting to the next, and at the end of the day, feeling like they have achieved very little. All they have done is talk about the job that they are supposed to be doing. If you're grinning to yourself at this time, you've been here and felt this. Signs that you have lost a sense of urgency is doing busy work, like tidying your desk drawers because you're in overwhelm and you don't know which part of the elephant to eat first. Alternatively, you're creating long to-do lists and choosing the easy things to tackle rather than the ones that would make the biggest impact. False urgency means that the results aren't quite there. Everyone is working really hard and it's not reflected in the results. People fall into excuses and justifications which we accept because our tolerance levels are too high. Does this sound familiar? Hands up. How many of you are kind of wriggling in your chair right now going, oh no, that's me. I do a version of that. There's lots of excuses about no time. Who doesn't have enough time? Consider there's no such thing as not enough time. This is created by people running from urgent to urgent because the plan is not clear and they do not take the time to do the hard thinking. Leaders who do not do the thinking to create well-defined plans with actions leave their people directionless and second-guessing what they think is the right thing to do. And then these people are crucified for the wrong actions that they take. I promise this causes resentment in teams. The power when we lead is to be present to the impact of our reluctance and fear. The power when we lead is to be present to the impact our reluctance and fear has on the people around us. We leave them floundering, waiting, wasting time, and second-guessing us. Tell the truth to yourself about this. How do you do it? Then work with your people. They will be the right people to figure out what's going on and how to correct. To do this, you will bring courage and vulnerability to the conversation and act with generosity. At Integrity and Values, we believe that the pathway to courage is firstly commitment. Only when we commit is the way made clear. Our lack of commitment creates ineffectiveness for us as leaders. Examine where you lack commitment and notice that that is the place you cause urgent type behaviour. Once we commit to a decision, doubt and fear will come rushing in. This is a healthy response. It doesn't go away. You simply become responsible for what you are saying and how you're acting. If you drown in the doubt, you will cause more urgent behaviour. Stop vacillating. Make decisions. Then, as soon as you have that moment of clarity, move into action, and lots of it. Keep taking the actions that move you toward the outcome that you want. If it's not working, pause, correct, and go again. So, we've discussed urgent versus a sense of urgency and what is false urgency. To close, when does complacency kick in? When do we become complacent and not act with a sense of urgency? A sign of complacency is you're a victim of your own success. You are part of a second or third generation family business, or you started business 20 odd years ago and it went really well for a long time. You've hit a bump in the road because you haven't taken the time to understand and examine what worked and why. Were you in the right place, at the right time, with the right product? Perhaps you had no external challenges, so you didn't take note of who your competitors were and what they were actually doing until they caught up with you. Your focus was not on moving things forward purposefully, rather it was doing things the way you always have done them and expecting the same result. You do know that that's the definition of insanity. How many of you have read Who Moved My Cheese? Put your hands up. All our clients have read it. If not, go read it. Leading with a sense of urgency is consistently keeping your eye on the cheese. Another sign of complacency is weak accountability structures. We covered that in the last question. Success can have people get lost in the weeds. How many of you are lost in the doing of the job instead of looking at the job as an eagle and working it out? You will lose your sense of urgency because you're down there in the weeds and you don't have an eye on the future. Next, don't buy your own press. Stay alert, stay awake, and work with a sense of urgency and look for where you're losing that edge. Where could you have improved your performance and then get onto it? The faster you do, the quicker you'll move forward. I recall an executive team member last year saying in one of our sessions, our results hide the real issues in the business. Remember that a sense of urgency is about keeping consistent pressure on, not taking your foot off the accelerator. Complacency is the killer of the future. A sense of urgency is absolutely determined by what you think is important. If you have a clear strategy with a great action plan, it's a lot easier to maintain that sense of urgency. Create those accountability structures that make a difference, that keep the sense of urgency front of mind inside of your business. Lower your tolerance levels. This is one of my biggest challenges. I would say to myself, they're so busy and I shouldn't be putting anything more on them. What I've learned is to give myself the same medicine that I've given our clients. Keep giving them stuff to do, pay attention for when they're starting to drown, and then you know you need another resource. Go and get one. Don't accept excuses or justifications or the denial and defense about what is going on inside of the business, and stop the busy work. A sense of urgency is about doing things on a daily basis that moves the business forward purposefully. That sense of urgency is created by you being present, living in the now with an eye on the probable future, correcting with velocity when you notice things are off course. What I've learned is when I work with a sense of urgency, so do my people. When I go to urgent, they do too. We, as leaders, are responsible for that. Stay present, stay clear, fulfill on your strategy and the vision of your business, and keep a sense of urgency about everything that's going on. Thank you for being here this morning.